And we have a network perimeter, we'll say, right around the edge of that. So each site has got a network edge, but the overall full company has got a total network edge as well. We're going to put security appliances at the edge of each network, and we're going to make sure that all data goes through those appliances to give us full visibility, give us all manner of controls and so on, to try and prevent threats, mitigate risks, but everything has got to go through these appliances. Now, I used to rack appliances for a particular vendor, and they had a manner of tools, all manner of them, and I used to fill entire rack cabinets with them. Just 2U appliances up and down the place, all had to be networked for that full visibility. So the pitfalls of this, the number of appliances needed, because you need them in every site, you need redundancy, you need 2 of each at least. Any kind of outage, you could lead to massive outages for your users. Usually you've got this mix and match of vendors if you're not all buying from the one, and it can be complicated to support. Again, getting that traffic through was a nightmare to get them through all of these appliances. You've got very little control of your remote workers because they have to be able to reach the appliances too if you want that full control. So the typical way of doing that is you set up a VPN, they would come in through the VPN, and then their web traffic is going back out through the appliances, so they now get that control. Now, with my previous employer, if I was on the VPN, I couldn't visit certain web pages. Certain things would be blocked. The minute that I turned off the VPN, I could do whatever I want. So what was it really securing? It was only securing me during company hours and slowed my productivity because the VPN actually slowed down my machine. So not an ideal way to be doing it. We've also got users that bring your own device. Bring your own device for me, whenever I mention it, people tend to think that it's, oh, somebody's going to use their personal laptop in an office all day and we don't have to buy them a laptop, but it's not. It's like anyone that hooks up their phone to the company Wi-Fi because they got the code off of the IT team. Third-party contractors that come on site, they have to bring their own laptop and so on, and you've got all the limitations of that. They can't install an agent because these technologies, we're going to try and get an agent on the devices that can in order that they can get the traffic to the appliances. And we're going to have to steer that traffic internally as well to the appliances in order that they can get that visibility. Again, with this kind of legacy security format, with a secure web gateway, policies in them tend to be blanket block. So you tend to get a list of categories such as gambling, adult websites and so on, and it was either block or deny. And those block or deny lists weren't even chosen by the company themselves. They were usually recommended. I believe Mumsnet used to go through and make recommendations to the government as to what sites should be allowed and what should be classed as harmful and so on. So it was easier just to give these blanket policies and block everything. And these legacy secure web gateways, very poor visibility of any kind of web usage. And Netskope themselves say that 50% of traffic is invisible to the company when they're using these tools. With the remote workers, again, there's so many of them now because of COVID, and a number of companies have been caught out with COVID. So many people working at home, and they've lost that visibility because people never planned ahead for that happening. How could you? But now we're going to take things just one little step further. But now that we've got that network edge, we've taken this as a 4 walls mentality. We have to control that network edge as best we can, but we're purely looking at the business. And now we throw in cloud. So we've got cloud infrastructure. We now have devices that are sitting outside of our network. They've got RDP ports open. Don't know how they've been configured. There might not be any standardization. People tend to use wizards that are built around convenience rather than security. I myself have done it, as we'll see, where I've created a number of devices in cloud, and the number of compliance issues that have been called out to me, even though I just used the wizards to set them up. And then we've got cloud applications. So cloud applications can essentially be anything, any service that's delivered through your browser, through an app on your phone, etc. They're cloud apps. So I speak to a number of people and they say, oh, we're not in the cloud. We haven't moved to cloud yet. But if your users are using any of these apps, then you are using the cloud and you need to be aware of it and be aware of the pitfalls. So what are our pain points with this kind of setup? So we have to redefine our perimeter. So again, that 4 walls mentality is out the window. We now need to capture all of this, but how do we? How do we know what apps are out there? How do we know what our people are using? How do we see all of this if our legacy products aren't going to give us that that visibility. We've lost like any kind of protection against our applications, because if I go to Office 365 right now, I get a login screen and there's nothing between me and that login screen. I'm going from my own device and I get a login screen. And if you don't have any MFA set up, you don't have any protection on that other than a username and password, that's the only thing stopping me getting in, is that username and password. Whereas before I might have to get on a VPN, get inside your building, etc., to get on your network to get to a certain thing. Now I can just go straight to the website, log in, it gets picked up by the domain, and I'm now in your instance. I can do what I want in there, whatever that user's permission for. So I take it from the stance of anyone from anywhere on any device can essentially reach any public-facing site or cloud app that you use, but your employees can also be using these things too, without your knowledge, and using them, not even thinking that they're doing anything wrong, but again, maybe with that focus on convenience and causing you problems behind the scenes. Particular use case for that, WeTransfer, which we're going to go through, is a big one. Employees also using their corporate IDs to log into these things and create accounts. So they might sign up for some file sharing tool just because it's convenient to send a file to someone that they need to do. They're having issues getting this file to the person for whatever reason. So they create an account on this file sharing app. And then that file sharing app gets breached and now their corporate credentials are now out there. And how many employees are signing up for these things using company accounts? You've got this poor control with these legacy devices as well. All you can really do, block, allow, create custom URL lists, very limited granular control that you can do on each of these. And the rate that they're being created, the applications, when it used to be websites were created every day and you could go on GeoCities and create a website in 5 minutes, well, apps are coming out that look legit every single day, but could actually quite be harmful to your business. They bring your own devices. They are largely unprotected still. They're relying on the clients that cannot be installed on a third-party machine. So that's not going to fly. And then we've got the unseen web behavior due to the changing language of the internet. So if you've got a device that all it's looking at is the HTML content of a page, well, it might not understand the code behind the scenes if you're using JSON and API calls. It might just not be able to translate that. So based on all of that, how can Netskope help? So with Netskope, you get unrivaled visibility of web usage, tied to single users and even the cloud apps that they're consuming. There's redundancy too, that doesn't come up much, but it's there. So I mentioned before about when you had these appliances in your data center, they're sitting at the network edge, you had to have at least 2 for your redundancy. You had to scale them up, go through the pain. If your web traffic increased, you had to now get another appliance, rack that. You had to upgrade them over time. It would always lead to issues, outages, and so on. And you're talking about if that machine goes down and it's set to fail close, then you've lost that entire chunk of your internet until it's fixed. But with Netskope, we have this thing called the Netskope New Edge platform. And I would summarize it as they've got data centers in 40 sites around the world. If you cannot reach your nearest data center, you will go to the closest one to you. It'll pick up another data center for you. You'll go to that, and now you won't lose your activity because you cannot reach that particular data center. You also go through their network as well. So if I was connecting to somewhere in the Middle East, then once I've went into Netskope, I get put out of Netskope in the Middle East, as opposed to just getting spat out here and then having to traverse the public internet to get there, which is pretty good. You've got the granular control of the cloud app activities without having to do that block entire site or category. So a good example of that is during COVID, look at how many of the voice apps you've had to use and video apps you've had to use with the frequency that people are now meeting online because they're not in the office. I've got about 8 installed at the moment. If you took a block mentality to that and only allowed a sanctioned one, you allowed Teams because that's what your company uses. You wanted to use Teams, you couldn't use Zoom, you couldn't use Google Meet, then you would lose that business. You would not be able to meet with these people, speak to them. You would lose that whole side of the business. So So you definitely don't want to do a block all situation, but with Netskope you could do granular controls, like maybe allow Google Meet to block certain activities during it, maybe block uploading files and so on. So that's a way of thinking. Your remote workers have got real-time protection, even when they're not on the VPN, because the traffic is going to the nearest cloud tenant. So if they've got an agent on their device, they're being steered directly to that cloud tenant. They're not having to come back into the premises to reach that tenant for security. For bring your own device, the steering options and reverse proxying that's offered, they offer protection to users even when no client exists on a device. And we're going to see that later in the call. We've got real-time threat protection DLP capabilities without relying on the on-premise connectivity for policy updates and so on. It's all done in real time from the tenant. You've got no more update outages. So I log in, I see my tenant has been upgraded. I can push out updates to all my clients automatically if I choose to. I can choose to go a couple of versions behind if I don't want to go to the latest one, and it'll all be handled automatically for me. And then we've got API-based protection. So this is where you could, as an example of what it can do, say I've got some malware, I put that into an instance of Box. I don't have any antivirus or anything that's scanning Box, so therefore someone else could download that file. But because we've got the API-enabled protection on, Netskope will actually review that file. It will see it's been generated on the server, it will review it, and if there's malware, it will get rid of it, depending on what policy set up. We're going to go through that too. So we're going to just jump in. This is the tenant. This is my test tenant here at Somerford. I go to the login page. I can create more control on this, but I'm just going to log in with my username and password. Okay, so taking into my dashboard, we've got a nice clean, intuitive interface. I'm just going to quickly step down through these menus on the left-hand side. I'm not going to go into great detail of each of them, just give a summary of what they'll do. We're going to start with the CCI because it's very important. This is the Cloud Confidence Index. So imagine that you've got a legacy secure web gateway and you need to know which sites are allowed and which aren't. How would you do that? Would you have to go and visit them all? Would you risk what if one of them is actually malware? Would you have to now dig into who the company are, what they do, etc.? Well, this is Netskope doing that for you for cloud applications. So you can see here that there are currently 40,781 applications that they've identified and created a CCI label for. Here we can grade them by score. So I could group them by an excellent score all the way down to it's still under research. The scoring is based on a variety of criteria, even right down to how engaging the company is, because Netskope do actually approach them, I believe, and they want some answers from them. If they don't engage with them, then low score or no score. If we go into view app details, we get to see all the types of information about has it been discovered on our network, how many users are using it, how often is it used, how much data is getting transferred to it, when was it actually first seen. We get a breakdown of the activities that can be done inside of that application. And when we go to create the policy, these activities would show up and allow us to granularly control. So I could maybe turn off the delete option here and not allow a user to delete, but allow everything else to them. Now, the key piece for me is down at the bottom here. We get all this research on what the application is, how it handles certain situations. A key one for me is this legal option, and it's who owns the data or the content on that application. So if you imagine I go to, say, WeTransfer, and I upload a file. To do so, I have to tick a box that says, I agree with the terms and conditions. But do I read that? No, I don't. I just tick it and I send the file. But that file has went somewhere, and it's maybe went on to WeTransfer's servers, and they could have a clause inside of that term and condition that states that they now own that. So if it's a user, an employee sending maybe proprietary information from the company to someone else, that is now the property of WeTransfer because that employee did that and they agreed to the terms and conditions. So that's a key one for me. It's really good to know that that exists and what their status is. We can compare as well. So if I was to pick a few, I need to move my. So these aren't really related apps, but it's just to speed things up. What I can do is I can now look down through both of these and see where they differ. So say, for example, we have 3 different teams that are using 3 separate cloud apps, and each of them costs money. And we want to standardize that and make sure that all 3 teams are using the same app and get rid of this kind of deviations across our business. Well, we can come in here, compare the applications and have a look at, if they've got the information, what price they are, what do they offer us, what have they got compliance-wise, etc., and see it all on this one page. And anything that is circled like that means that there's something different, so that you can focus on that, and the rest of it is all the same if they're not circled like that. So that's the CCI, very handy. Saves you a lot of legwork in working out what these applications do and so on. And that scoring facility is great as well. If we look at our incidents now, incidents are things of note. So things that Netskope is definitely calling out to you. So things you definitely want to be paying attention to within here. There are some things that are triggered by policy and some things that are triggered by the analytics that they are doing of your data behind the scenes. So you can see here I've triggered a number of policies for Gmail and Box. We can drill down into this, see the users, etc., see exactly what files they were. I'm just going to very quickly go through these because I'm very conscious of the time. Anomalies, so any kind of strange behavior. So I've got data exfiltration there. I've been uploading, downloading a lot in my test client. It's flagging that up because it could be someone or a tool or some malicious hacker that's stealing all your data. It's going to flag that to you. I've also got proximity event here where I've logged in from 2 different time zones very quickly. And it's saying that was impossible for you to get, I think it was New York, in that space of time. So it's calling that out too. And it's telling you this strange behavior. I've seen it before with people sharing logins and things like that, flags. So very handy. Compromised credentials. So the usernames that are stored in here are being checked by Netskope against any kind of breaches that have been discovered and dumps of emails and usernames and so on. And we can see it's flagged a few, but we're always defaulting to the last 7 days here on the top right. I can change that to 90 days. I will get more information. And we can see that it's suggested that this email could have been breached by MyFitnessPal, Last FM breach. They're not exact matches because this email definitely hasn't been breached on these things, but it's giving you that idea. So if you've got a user that's giving those company credentials to a number of cloud applications and they show up in here, then it's potentially their username and password has been leaked at some point. Definitely worth paying attention to. Behavior analytics, we can see who are the rogue users, who are the ones that keep breaking things, trying to break the rules, breach DLP, downloading malware, etc., and focus on who we might need to train. Malware, triggered by policy, very handy because we can go in, we can drill down into exactly what was it that was downloaded. Some of them will actually show you what behavior the malware would have taken with full screenshots and so on. Malicious sites, you go to a site in Google. I can do one here, this unsafe site here. Let's do that. And you can see it's a deceptive site. Google have flagged it too. There's something up this site. Looks like a front for something. Behind the scenes, they've probably got tons of fake Office 365 login pages, but Netskope's calling it out, Google are calling it out. It's a malicious site, definitely something you might want to block or see who it was that visited it, why did they visit it, etc. Take some action. We have some quarantine and legal hold. So quarantine, the file that gets uploaded to Box that has the malware, what action is going to be taken with it? It's going to get moved away. We'll look at that in detail when we do it. And legal hold, you've got a document that's flagged some kind of legal issue being emailed, etc. It's going to hold on to that. It's going to take some action with it too. API enabled protection. So this is where I like to use Box for my demos. So you can see that I've got 3 instances of Box here. These are, we'll call it introspection. That's a term. So these are where you've got the Netskope looking into your cloud apps. So there's a number of cloud apps that Netskope can do that with, and it's reviewing any activity in those cloud apps. It's not doing it in real time, it's waiting for an API call. So I can upload a file to it, and once Netskope is aware that file is there based upon the API call, it will now go and take action on it. It will scan it, it will check it out, it will do all that kind of stuff. The API enabled protection, very, very handy. Policies, where we're doing all the config for all of our profile, policy creation, everything is largely going to be done in this section. We'll be going through that later. Cloud infrastructure, so I have added a couple of cloud instances. We've got AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. You can see I mentioned earlier about using the wizards. I use the wizards to build all my servers. I'm not an expert in AWS by any means. So I'll go in and I'll build the server, I'll use the wizards, but you can see just by using the wizards how many failures I've got from a security and governance perspective. We can drill down into the compliance. We can see exactly what those issues are, what we can maybe take remediation with, and we can get a full inventory of everything that's in our estate. Scope IT, this is where all our data is, all our events, all our usage, everything comes from Scope IT. So you can see very clear what applications, how many users, how many sessions, etc. And then we've got our alerts based on policies, what's been triggered, who did it, what application was it, etc. So we'll be coming back to that. So that's the front end. I'm just going to very quickly go through the back end, and that will take us right up to past. Then I've got half an hour to do all these use cases. So the back end is front end. You're dealing with all the configuration for the policies. That's all your data, all your traffic, all your settings for actually reviewing the information that you're going to receive through your tenant. The settings is the back end, so that's configuring the tenant to do its job. In a nutshell, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm not going to go through them all, but I will take a quick look at the API enabled protection and SaaS. So these are the applications that you can configure for the API enabled protection. So you can see they're all the big ones: OneDrive, Google, Gmail, etc. And down at the bottom here, last thing on this, very detailed help section, which I use all the time. I've still yet to find anything that isn't covered in this help section. Very, very handy to have. It's not hidden behind some kind of online login or anything like that, which I really don't like. All my help is here. It's loaded directly from the tenant. As long as you're a Netskope user, you can access it. Right, let's do some use cases. So our first one, typical, everyone always uses gambling as an example when they're doing some kind of web filtering. So we'll do the same. Let's go to Ladbrokes. Click on Ladbrokes and it's blocked. Now, one thing to note here is this is fully customizable, this alert. So you can see that I've specifically mentioned, please go to williamhill.com, because I've allowed that in a URL list, and I'm informing the user, you can't do this, but you can do this other thing to cut down on support costs. But it stops the user trying to find a way around it. That's what you find is if you block someone from doing something, they will just find a way around. They see, I've experienced it myself when it comes to blocking content on the internet. You're made to feel that, oh, I'm trying to skive off here. You don't consider the security side. It's, oh, they don't want me visiting this particular site because they think I'm skiving, etc. Or they don't want me to use this WeTransfer, but it's really easy, so I'll find something else. And with the majority of apps having these features, these cloud storage apps allowing you to transfer files and so on, they will find another way within 5 minutes. So try and give them some information here, which we'll see in a moment as to how you can educate your users, and I'll give you a use case on that. So I'm blocked from going to Ladbrokes. Another thing as well is I cannot circumvent. So I can't go to Google Translate and try and get around that by using some kind of proxy, in-browser proxy. It's going to catch it if I try and get around that. So I'm even blocked from there to go to Ladbrokes. But if I go to William Hill, I can access the site. And that is just a very simple, we have a policy in here. That is an exception. I am blocking every single gambling site. and I have an exclusion for the William Hill URL. Very basic secure web gateway configuration there to block based upon categories for web content. But if we want to take that a bit further, we now want to look at the cloud apps. So the use case is the WeTransfer. Client that I was dealing with, they've got about 80,000 users. And they have rolled out Netskope. They're getting lots of data back. And they found that hundreds of users were using WeTransfer. And the files that they were uploading to WeTransfer, they really shouldn't have been uploading. So if we go to WeTransfer, you can see how easy it is, why people would use it. I just put in an email address of where I want the file to go. I've got to know my shortcut again. This is this keyboard thing. And I put in my email address. I can put in a message if I want. I add a file and then try and transfer. You can see here I've got access denied. Now in the message content, what I'm telling the user is, you shouldn't be doing it this way. However, you can use Office 365 in the exact same way. And here is a link as to how you do it, so that they don't immediately go and look for a way around this to try and find an app that isn't blocked. It's easy. They can do the exact same thing. Just share that with an external user straight from Office 365, which is sanctioned by the company. They would prefer you doing it that way. And we can also have the controls behind the scenes in Office 365 as well, via Netskope. So that's the basics of the cloud, the granular cloud controls. If we return to this policy, where's my WeTransfer one? You can see that I've only blocked 2 of the activities, which are upload and share. I'm not blocking download. And that's because so many of our clients, if I'm the customer that doesn't want WeTransfer used by my people, well, other people are using it. And I'm happy to accept a file from it. I just don't want my users using it to send files. So I'm not stopping the receipt of files, not blocking it completely, because you'd be in a different world with that, where now your clients and customers and so on can't send you something, so they won't. They'll say it's too complicated, I can't send you this file, so I'm not going to send you it, and then something bad could happen. But we're just blocking based on that. And again, I could go to the CCI, I could look at exactly what is allowed for particular applications, or when I load the application in here, it breaks down what I can do. So if I hit edit here, you can see these are the options that I have for this particular application. And very easy. I mean, these policies, very easy to set up. If you look here, I've got my source, got a user, that could be a group. I can add criteria, they're coming from certain devices and so on. I choose what is it I want to do, category, if it's going to be mainly web content, specific cloud apps. App instance, private app, we won't go through at the moment, but very easy to choose what you're blocking or allowing. We just choose our action. What do we want to do? Do we want to inform the user? Do we want to allow it through, etc.? I use the template, so this is where I'm choosing what the user sees when that prompt appears, and then I give it a name, and that is it. It takes seconds to set up a policy. I'll cancel out that. So our next one is, we're going to get some malware. I'm going to jump into this iCar. iCar allow you to download a malware test file. And I have the threat protection enabled here. And there we go. So I'm warned that you've just tried to download malware. I'm given some kind of remediation action. I should contact IT, or I could just block it. It hasn't reached me, so do I care about it? But I do want to tell my user off for it in some way, so that they don't do it again. But it doesn't just apply to like downloading a file like that, because if I was to now go to Gmail, you can see that I've also been sent malware by someone. So I'm going to try and download it, and again, I cannot get the attachment on my machine from the email client I'm using in the browser, because all web activities get monitored here. Because I'm in a browser for this, Therefore, I'm blocked from getting that malware. Okay, I'm going to turn off my client now. And we're going to go to box. So I have no client log on my machine running at the moment. If I did, it would just block the malware from being uploaded the minute that I tried to do it. I'm going to put the malware into, I keep having to move this GoToWebinar control panel, so I do apologize if you're seeing my mouse doing strange things. I'm going to upload this malware. So there's no controls in box, they aren't scanning the file, they aren't checking for malware. That's why it's dangerous allowing users to log it, like upload anything they want to these, because there's absolutely no antivirus happening here. I just uploaded malware straight to box. Now a user could come along, they're in this particular group, they see this file, they could download it, they could open it. Now it starts to propagate. And I've seen it where you see one user's had it, then a week later another user, and then another user a week later in the activity in Netskope, because it's not getting dealt with, but you've got that malware there. If we were to refresh this page at the moment, I just want to flag there was a green prompt there that says that a new file has appeared. If I refresh this, you can see that what was originally a docx file, so a Word document, has now become a text file. And that's because the minute that file got uploaded, Netskope became aware that it existed because we have that API-enabled protection on here, and it said, I'm going to check that file out, and discovered it was malware. So rather than just delete the file, we create what's called a tombstone file. Again, this is about informing the user so that they don't just try and upload it again. This little text file has been created by Netskope to say, your file had malware, contact the administrator. I have a copy of it now. It's been sent to my instance of Box, so another instance of Box, and put into a quarantine folder. It's been zipped up, it's been password protected, and I can decide what to do with it now, because it might not be malware, it might be a false flag. Very rare that it would be a false flag, but it could be. So we don't want to delete it yet. We've quarantined it, we're going to check it out, and we've told the user so that they do not try and upload it again and try and get around any kind of protection that's happening at the moment. So that's really the malware that we're covering. I'm going to jump in and we'll now look at the DLP. I'm going to turn my client back on here. So I'm now going to upload a file that has got personal identifiable information in it. And you can see that I'm able to upload that successfully, because again, I don't care about receiving the file. It's now on my system. I'm aware of it. I protect it based on my company policy, but I don't want the file now being leaked. I don't want it going back out the way. So I can upload, but the minute that I try to download, so there we go, we've got the GDPR compliance issue here, because it's identified, there's personal identifiable information in that file, and I have a DLP policy set up. Now the DLP policy is fully configurable. If I come into my DLP profiles here, out of the box, you get all these great policies based on location, based on, general rules that Netskope are well aware of for identifying GDPR information. You do get false flags because it's so generic, the GDPR information. One such use case that I saw was a supermarket, massive supermarket chain, and they were getting non-stop false flags because it was the words white and wine next to each other, and they were taking wine to be race. But you can actually customize your profiles, your rules, and so on to get rid of those false flags. And you can create rules where, for this particular customer, if the word wine appeared anywhere near the word white within about, maybe 20 characters to 100 characters, then it would be ignored, because it was assumed that that's going to be some kind of sales list or something for the supermarkets. Now, my user just got blocked again from trying to do something. They're going to try and find a way around that. They're going to see if they can get that file out somehow. So how would you do that? With a document, turn it into an image, take a screenshot of it, assume that they're not going to be able to scan the document, but Netskope can. So there we go. So I can upload that, totally fine. Again, I don't care about it coming to me. But now, if I want to take it, we can see it's actually picked up, but it's an ID card. It's managed to recognize that. And that's called fingerprinting. So I give Netskope an example of the document and I give it a threshold. And I say, if it matches this within a certain criteria, then take action, do whatever I configure the policy to do. You can see in here, it's got date of birth and so on, it's got full name, etc. So definitely it's going to be GDPR issues. We don't want that leaving this particular site. So therefore, we've got a policy that's going to block it. Now, I'm going to try and circumvent Netskope again, and I'm going to try to log into Office 365. You can see I've got my Gmail account here. And I can log in fine. So that, we'll call that my company Gmail account. Maybe the domain at the end would be a company name, but that's my work email account, and I'm allowed to log into my work Office 365 with that. If I try a different email account, I'll just put in something random. Now, obviously, if I was putting in something random, it wouldn't work anyway. But you can see that it's been blocked. And that's because I have on this policy a constraint. So a constraint is where I'm saying, allow the user to log into this, but only if their email address matches this particular domain. And in that case, I gave it the full email address and said, only allow a login to Office 365 if the email address matches this. Now that's handy if you've got, say, Google Drive. So if your users are using Google Drive, they could be logging in 1 minute to their company one, downloading things, and then logging in another session to their personal one and uploading the files to it. But you could block the entire login from here, as long as it's their company one, they're allowed to log in, essentially. Now you can turn that on its head though. So how does a phishing attack actually work? Phishing attack, you get sent an email. That email, you click the link, it looks like a Dropbox login page. This is the real Dropbox login page, but I'm just using it as an example. So you click the link in email, it said you need to log into Dropbox, there's an issue with your account, etc. So you click the link, you go straight to it, you try and log in. Button blocked. Let's pretend that's not a real Dropbox page. If you've got, say, 20 cloud applications that are sanctioned for your company and you know your users log into them with their corporate account, they're allowed to do that, that is fine. And you were to block your corporate email account or username type structure from every other site that existed, you've essentially stopped phishing in its tracks. Because even if they get that link and they try and commit a login, then it should be blocked because they're trying to do it with the wrong email, essentially the wrong page. It should be blocked from them. So we'll come out of that. Making up good time here. I do apologise if I am rushing. We might have good time. So this is a good one. So for here, we're going to look at the reverse proxy. So reverse proxying, I'm going to turn off my client again. Control panel. There we go. Once I remember how to right click in a Mac. Oh, I've just been, nope, I'm back. I thought I was getting kicked off there. So I'll turn off my client. So let's pretend again, I'm on my own laptop. So very common at the moment, COVID, people in their own home, sitting on their own laptop. A use case for me with that one was, I once went abroad on the Friday. I never put an out of office on my work email. This was with previous employer. I went abroad, logged in from another country to their Office 365 and put my out of office on. And there was no alert, no warning. There was nobody checked it and asked me, were you definitely in this other country? Going back to the statement, it could be anyone, anywhere, any device that's logging into these public logins. Then should it be happening? No. So with the reverse proxying, I'm going from my own machine at the moment, pretend it's my own laptop. I don't have a client and I want to log into a company instance, and I'm going to log into Salesforce. You can see here I've got it set up here as a login method, and I'm taken to Okta. So Okta is going to handle the authentication here, and it's also going to pass me over. So it's now passed me over to Netskope. So even though I don't have a client on this machine, I am currently being checked. Say hello to that. And the way that you can see that is if you look at the top of the screen here, look at the address. This rproxy.goscope.com section has appeared, and it's been integrated into me logging into my Salesforce. So the user, if they don't notice that, will never ever know that they're actually being monitored at the moment. Not that we would do it sneakily, but it's not interfering with me using this website at all. But I am going through the Netskope tenant to do so. So what happened is I went to log in to the Salesforce login screen. The authentication get handed over to Okta. Okta has an application installed from Netskope, from the Okta marketplace. It then, we won't say hijacks, too strong a term, but it takes over the connection, injects itself into that URL. I'm now going via the tenant, but I'm being presented with a web page that I expected to see, but I'm getting that full protection because I'm going via the tenant without having a client installed. So that to me is ideal as well. I'll just put my client back on. We'll just hit configuration here. And we can see in here that we're connected to this particular gateway IP. But we can actually do checks to see what our redundancy is and so on. But that's really the config for the client. It's a very basic, lightweight client. All it's doing is steering. It's not messing with your connection in any way. It's just steering, and it's based upon the policies in Netskope, the steering policies or steering configurations as to what traffic is actually going to hit that tenant and what doesn't. Because you do get bypasses, you can set up things that do not go via the Netskope tenant. And you could, for example, we can do SSL decryption. So maybe you don't want to decrypt maybe banking traffic. So therefore, you can actually set up policies that will bypass a tenant or bypass particular configurations in here. I'm just using the default tenant config. You can see here that my device classification is unmanaged as well. It's just a test lab. I could create it as managed. There's a variety of ways that you can actually class it as a managed device. The simplest way, you could just create a text file that exists somewhere on the box. And as long as that text file exists, it verifies to Netskope that yes, this is a managed device. You want to be looking at classification of your devices, especially when you're using any kind of BYOD, because then you can start making policies where users can only log into certain things if they're coming from a managed device. But if they aren't, then they're not allowed to. They will be blocked because their device maybe isn't as secure as we want it to be. So to round things off, now we can actually go through the events. So we very quickly touched on them earlier, but we'll go through them in a bit more detail. So we have all our applications here, all nicely grouped based upon each one. We can see the number of users, number of sessions. Click on it, nice breakdown. We see the CCI score, very handy. You get a lot of information up front. You're not having to go dig through, like go Googling things to find out about particular applications if people are using them. And things do tend to jump out at you when they shouldn't be done, when you get the visibility of it. From the web perspective, we can look at all the sites that have been visited too, number of users, number of page visits, etc. And we can also look at all the users. I only have the one at the moment that's doing anything, my demo user, but we can see exactly what they've been up to, what they've been doing, the data that they've actually moved and so on. We have our application events. So this is everything that's been done. So every time I've done something in the the say Office 365 and so on, then it's being flagged. So you can see that I logged out, there was login attempts, etc. Everything is here, but anything with a little orange mark means that it triggered some kind of policy or alert and so on. Everything else is just standard business as usual. You've been up to something. If we now look at our page events, this is very handy because it drills down into a lot of information about the back end kind of web data that's going on. So if I was trying to create an allow URL list, I could be looking up how many URLs that a particular site has to load in order to load correctly. But I could come in here too and drill down and see, all right, I need to allow this particular domain here for Google Video to work, so on, when I'm building out my policies. We don't have any network events because I don't have that configured. That's for the next webinar. And here are our alerts. So everything that we've actually done today, we get a lot of information about the user. We get a lot of information about what they were up to, what it was that actually triggered. We can dig into what it was, what policy, etc. was triggered in order to set this off. And then we can take action. We can acknowledge them. We could be sending them to people. You can pull these out via the REST API if you want to send them into something like Splunk, and you could create workflows in Splunk where it will automatically acknowledge them once action has been taken. Very, very malleable that way. And that is Netskope. So we've come to 5 minutes left. I have 2 slides left. I'm going to get rid of this remote desktop. So we here at Somerford, I definitely hope you got some insight into the control and peace of mind that Netskope can give you, especially in this new age of the internet and what you might not be seeing is going on right now, particularly if you're using legacy secure web gateways. And we didn't go through everything. So that was us just, I mean, we only went through like one policy each with one example. I could spend all day going on about this because it's I like it. Maybe that comes across. I like this tool. We would have had a long webinar if I had to talk about it all day. So for Somerford, we're aligned with Netskope because they are the best of breed when it comes to secure web gateway. Now, I don't like the term secure web gateway. It's a next generation secure web gateway, and it offers so much more. So you've definitely got way more to it than just controlling web traffic, particularly with the cloud side of things, the cloud IaaS, the app-enabled protection, and so on. The private access, just to confirm what that is, because I've mentioned that a couple of times, it can replace a VPN essentially. It's where I'm going to websites, I'm going to cloud apps at the moment, but what I could do if I'd configured the private access, set that up, I could open up an RDP file and I could RDP directly to a box, whether it's in the on-premise, whether it's in cloud. You do need an extra bit of kit for that to be installed wherever it can reach that device, but it creates a secure connection all the way through from my machine to that device, and it's all controlled by Netskope on a particular port, like 3389 for RDP or SSH or 22. The tool itself, we're using it. So if you could see my Mac at the moment, I have the Netskope client installed. We've rolled it out within the business as a test at the moment. I'm in the process of configuring it, and I do like what I see as I'm doing that. Our Netskope consultants, we're fully qualified, and our business has its own in-house support team. So that's for all of the technologies that we offer. We have expert knowledge in the other technologies as well that integrate well, such as Splunk. As stated at the start of the call, I've got another Netskope webinar coming up on the 11th of March where we'll look at the cloud security module, Netskope private access in detail. So if you wish to join me for that, I hope this one hasn't put you off too much. And with that, thank you for attending, and I hope this was beneficial to you in some way.